Okay, so usually when I'm working my top/bottom list of the year, I also do a list of films that disappointed me. They didn't quite reach or squandered their potential, but last year was fine. I couldn't find 10 films that let me or themselves down. There was one. One film that squandered an amazing cast, a historical drama that found a relatively unused piece of modern history and then wasted it so completely and utterly that it's kind of amazing. And I know I shouldn't have to say this, but the spoiler warning for this is DEFCON 1. I'm going to spoil the living daylights out of this film, so don't say you weren't warned. Anyway, The Aftermath is based on the 2013 novel of the same name by Rudyard Brooke. I've never read it, never will, and won't reference it again. It is not a historical text, merely using a fictionalized version of real-life location, and will be treated as a work of fiction, free from the constraints of having to be accurate to real life. On the surface, it's a very, very simple narrative. Post-World War II, a British colonel and his wife are assigned to live in Hamburg during the post-war Reconstruction era. Keira Knightley's head is turned by the German who previously owned the house they now live in, and soon she must choose between the two men, either her emotionally distant husband with whom they had a child who died during the war, or Alexander Skarsgård's Stephen Lubert, who is the most perfect man alive and lost his wife in the Allied bombing. Now, added to this the fact that Lubert's daughter is being seduced into a sort of Nazi resistance to the British presence, and you have what could have been a really, really tense thriller. Look, just imagine it. The man in charge of the British reconstruction of Hamburg, as tough a job as it is almost possible to imagine, doesn't realise his wife is having an affair with a man who might or might not still be a Nazi, whose daughter is directly feeding information to the Nazis, becoming even more broken as they try to patch together a broken city and people, except none of that happens. What could have been a unique and tense thriller where you're not sure if Lubert's feelings and actions are genuine and what happens as the result of two people that are grieving together, or one person using that grief to manipulate another into betraying her husband, her country, the memory of her child. It just doesn't happen. Instead, if you were to move the main triangle to, say, a country house in the 1920s and make Lubert's character a gardener who had lost his wife to the Spanish flu, then nothing would really change. Because this film wastes the central, the most amazing aspect that it has, its setting. We are told about food and fuel shortages, a starving population being helped by the very men that a few months ago might have killed a brother, a father, a son, except we see very little of that. And cinema is a visual medium. Show me things. Don't tell me about them. I mean, aside from a few quick establishing shots, the most impact this has on the plot is that one character mentions to another having difficulty finding cakes, and that's about it. Look, Keira Knightley and Jason Clarke are fine with their roles when they're given something to do. Clarke, eternally atoning for Terminator Genesis, is fantastic as a grieving man trying to reconnect with his wife whilst trying to rebuild a country, but he's barely given any screen time. Keira has apparently stated words to the effect that as long as she sticks to historical films, doesn't have to star in films like Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit.
I'm in the CIA.
Thank God. I thought you were having an affair.
And it's clear that this is her comfort zone, but again, she's not really given much to act off of. She has little of any chemistry with her lover, and I never really believed in the film's central dilemma. But again and again, I just keep coming back to the film's location because, look, the Second World War has been filmed from a million different ways. I can name a dozen films set during the Cold War, but a film set during the formative years, when relationships are cooling between the two superpowers, when the war is over on paper but not so much on the ground, when the Germans are having to
Unlearn what you have learned
for the last 20 years by people who months ago were bombing them into the ground. This film has no interest in this aspect of itself. Maybe it's better explored in the book. I wouldn't know, and I don't care. The way this film relegates a country coming to terms with what happened to it and what is inevitably going to happen to it in the near future to a D plot at best. You should not be able to swap out 1946 Hamburg for a surfing holiday and a surfing instructor with a twinkle in his eye. And that's why The Aftermath is such a disappointment. It's a holiday romance novel wearing the clothes of a serious film, set during an appallingly neglected area of history. It's got great actors who are given very little to do. Subplots that could carry entire films on their own are allowed to waste away so we can see Keira Knightley in another dress, alternating between looking bored or trying to enjoy kissing two hunky men. It doesn't even deal with the shades of grey that must have abounded in that area. It's all so clean, so pleasant, no mention of, I don't know, sending medicine to one holiday instead of another, providing power to one section before another. Even the Nazi who seduces Lubert's daughter is 3 seconds away from twirling his moustache and breaking out into an evil laugh. Look, The Aftermath It's not the worst film I've ever seen, nowhere close. It's beautiful to look at and has some good moments, but it could have been a good or even great one if it had had the courage of its convictions and allowed a little moral greyness in. If it had explored its world a little more, if it developed its characters and explained exactly why Knightley decided to stay with her husband rather than acting like some censor had stepped in and demanding the ending be changed to make it more morally pleasing. Hell, even some sort of moral choice about something would have been great. Instead, there was a void. There were objectively and definitively worse films out last year. Cats is arguably one of those terrible films that lives forever. Hellboy is the worst comic book film ever made. The Aftermath will sink without trace, and I'll probably never think about it again after this video, apart from when I think about what could have been. Close your eyes. Imagine an HBO series set in this world, less morally clear, more shades of grey, spies everywhere, loyalties bent, twisted and broken, all in the cause of helping to restore people that were trying to kill you a few weeks ago. Hold that image in your mind. Now remember then instead we got The Aftermath. A glossy, syrupy film trying to pretend it's a film for adults without the guts to go where it needs to go. And that's why it's my most disappointing film of 2019. But what did you guys think? What was your most disappointing film of 2019? Comment below, let me know. I'm Daniel, this has been a Dunking. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe.